It says we're live streaming. I think we're live on YouTube. Okay, welcome to the weekly roundup, everybody. Okay, so we had a bit of a discussion here before coming on live about what to talk about, but we landed on this teacher pay. Um, Something that I read, and this was about yoga teachers going on strike for higher pay. This is such a rife subject for having like really catchy titles. They've just managed to put all the puns in there. Overstretched and underpaid, despite bending over backwards, they're not getting paid. All of the puns, all of the puns in there. So yeah, um, what it's saying is that this is this is in Colchester in the UK. Yoga teachers, I think it was skimming the article, it's mostly yoga teachers paying sort of teaching at gyms, Leisure World, etc. And the hourly rate really is pretty terrible. And some of them being even like when they actually count the hours, being under the legal minimum wage, which is really not okay. So we talked a little bit about this and how to pay your teachers. What we've been recommending for a long time is to have some kind of tiered performance-based pay rather than something that's just based on how many years you've been teaching. So it's shifted. Things have changed a lot. It used to be that it was pay per class and what training do you have and how long have you been teaching. That's it. um Nothing else. And then of course we do get a culture then that if you just paid per class, teachers start showing up at the very last minute and then they leave right after, like, class is finished, okay, I'm getting my stuff and I'm leaving, which isn't great for studio owners and which isn't great for the studio at all. We kind of need the teachers to be there and to also be part of the studio and to do some of the sort of front desk, behind the scenes, before class, after class, selling. The list kind of grows, engaging with the studio, being there to practice, posting on social media, and promoting the classes. So the list kind of grows as to what we ask people to do. And yeah, I mean, we've got to make sure that we're not asking too much also. There's a line there, definitely. I am all for the performance-based pay and in different tiers, but I think we have to sometimes be a little bit careful about what is it we're asking them to do, and is this actually okay? Terry, you had some interesting
Yeah,
discussion
that's a really
here.
good point, Vicky. I too believe in the performance-based pay, beyond just how many bodies are in the room. And I too believe all of those things you just said. And when you move to, or if you're on a performance-based pay, regardless of what type of pay structure, it would behoove you to make sure that what you're asking your employee, and obviously this is mostly for employees, although you can have some type of tiered structure for contractors. And of course, then you have the whole debate of contractors versus employee versus here in the United States. We've had plenty of conversations about that. But whichever way you're set up with your staff, your teachers, whether they're independent contractors or employees, is making sure that you're legally compliant with what you're asking people to do. So is everything on your tiered pay structure, can you legally require that for someone to get that pay tier? Right. So it's like anything in your business when it comes to things like pay, insurance, business finance, things like that. It pays you to pay someone who is an expert in that field to review it, right? Just to know that you've got your I's dotted, your T's crossed. And for instance, I do know this is happening more and more, particularly in California, because California is definitely cracking down on like gyms and fitness places, service related industries. Is this also came up is if you're paying by the class and then you're kind of calculating the pay based on okay, they have to be here a half hour before and stay a half hour after, and then they get this tier. It probably is better if you actually pay them by the hour. So when they can clock in, they can clock out, because that then affects things like sick pay, sick time pay, workman's compensation pay, unemployment if it comes to that. So actually reflecting the actual hours that they are from the time they get there to the time they leave. So again, this is where checking in with your local state authorities. Are you in compliance with, regardless of whatever the pay structure is? You want to make sure that you are legally compliant. It just pays you to spend that money to have someone go through it and say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't. Yes, you can. No, you can't. So that way, if there is an issue down the road, you know that everything is good, that you're legally compliant, right? So, simple things is like here in the States is, do you have your labor law posters posted somewhere in your space? Right? That is a legal requirement, I think, in pretty much every single state. So do you have those posters posted somewhere? Because if someone comes in, a state official does any type of audit and they're not there, you get fined. I mean, so there's some of those things that, again, as a business owner, you need to make sure that you're in compliance, right? It's not just, oh, I'm going to open a yoga studio and get some yoga teachers and teach some yoga classes. We all know that it's a lot more than that. As we say, the devil's in the details, and it's the details that are going to trip you up. So if that's not your thing, then hire somebody to do it for you. Maybe partner with an HR specialist. A lot of companies will do HR. You don't have either. They're like, they'll charge a fee for, okay, we'll help you with your documents, da da da. And then if you need their services, you just contract with them. No different than like an accountant or, a bookkeeper or something like that. Same thing. If you need a lawyer, fine. We have our best friend, Corey Sterling, Conscious Counsel. He's our go-to yoga lawyer. And I posted about this before, is that, having your documents drafted by an attorney that are specific for your business is a really good practice. So using somebody else's, I use this analogy once and Corey just loved it, is like using somebody else's documents and just kind of changing them a little bit or downloading from the internet is like having sex without protection. And one night stand with no protection. It's like, you don't know what you're going to get, friends, right? And so you want to make sure that you are legally protected in all aspects, because I would guess that most of the time when studio owners get into trouble, it's almost always with people issues. And so when you have the strong contracts, that also part of your pay is, do you have a teacher agreement? Here's a little, then I'll pass it to Vicki, that just came up in around my old studio. I guess there's some swirling controversy up there. I got all the 411 from my BFF the other day. Between my old studio and this new studio open, and there's accusations of poaching clients and poaching teachers. And now some of the studio directors up there are considering having, non-competes with the teachers, saying, if you teach for me, you can't teach anyplace else. And if you stop teaching for me, then you can't teach anywhere else for like a year. So these are all things that it's a good idea to have your ducks in a row. Vicki.
Yeah, I was wondering about pay per head. It seems to be something that's a little bit more common in the vinyasa world. But it seems like in some cities, that's the prevalent way of paying teachers. And these are like places where there are many yoga, like bigger cities, there are many yoga studios there. There are, a number of like rock star teachers who will, their classes will be packed out, and they really don't, like, they don't want to teach unless you give them that kind of incentive. I don't know if you guys have come across that before.
I have some, I think pay per head is really common, I think, in the fitness world, but I do agree that it is like in major metropolitans. I think if you are going to do a pay per head, then you need to have a cap. It's, like say, okay, we're going to pay, let's say your capacity in your room is 30, right? And it's like, okay, anything above this, we will pay per head up to a maximum of this. so that you then can control your payroll. Because if you have a big room and you're paying, you don't have a cap on it, you could realistically pay a teacher
Sure.
like 150, $60 to teach a class. So I think having some boundaries around pay per head. The other one I posted about that I was paid for when I was a spin instructor for a hot minute in 2021 is we were paid by the capacity. So it was one rate if you were up to 50% capacity. It was the next tier was from 51 to 80, like 80 something. And then over that, you got the top tier. So that was not per head, it was just paid per capacity. And at the time, I did the calculation too. And we were employees, and we were required to be there a half hour before, and we were required to stay a minimum of 15 minutes after. And if I wasn't making that top base and I did the math, I was making like $15 an hour on what they required to be there. Yeah. So it's like, that's the other thing to Vicky's point is whatever you're going to pay, you should calculate it out based upon an hour to make sure that you are at least hitting the minimum wage, whatever that is. And unfortunately, I was going through this with a client of mine who's in Georgia. Unfortunately, in some states, they're still at the federal minimum wage is like what, 8.20, whatever. It's just pathetic, in my opinion. So yeah, so this is the one thing is like, you really got to get this dialed in, because this is the thing that can trip you up and cause big HR issues and problems down the road. I don't know, Carol, how did you pay at your studio?
We did per class, but what this discussion is, it's coming up for me is like, as a studio owner and part of the YC, I would watch these roundups and like almost get overwhelmed because it's like, oh my God, I need to do that. And I think the trip up is one, time, and two, money, because trying to hire an HR expert or the lawyer, like you're looking at your books and you're like, how do I even afford that? So I guess what's coming up to me is like going back to like get with a coach
Yeah.
to like make sure you have these foundational things in, because you need the money and the time as the owner to look at these broader, bigger pieces. And if you don't have money coming in and you don't have people working for you, it does become it's scary, it can be very overwhelming. So I don't know, I was just kind of going back to when I would watch these as a studio owner where I didn't have everything dialed in yet. And it was like, these are really good ideas, but how do I even do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. And it is a bit the chicken and the egg. I want to do this, but I don't have the money to do it. But if I get the money to, it's one of those things. And at the same time, it might be one of those times where you just have to put it on a credit card and get it done. And because certain things really need to get done. One of the things I also wanted to circle back with when we're talking about independent contractors here in the United States is that, oh man, I just lost the thought there. If one thing people are like, well, I'd like to make my independent contractors employees, but I don't know how to do that. It is a fairly straightforward process. You can probably look up on Google it and find out how to do it. But basically, you just have to go from making sure you're compliant with the state and federal authorities. The biggest thing, they have to fill out what's called a W-4. So you know what the withholdings are. Once you get your number from the state, then you plug that in, and like someone like a QuickBooks or a Gusto or something like that, they have all that stuff in there. Once you put in your county, all that, it's going to tell you, you plug in what your tax rate is. Your state will tell you this is the tax rate, right, for all these things. So it's pretty simple process to set up. But in terms of the cost is if you're looking at, well, I can't afford to take my independent contractors to employees. I hear that a lot. So when you look at it, we say it's about 8 to 10% additional payroll cost. And so I went back because I still have all my financials from when I had my studio. And I went back and did the calculations for the entire time I owned my studio, added it up and divided by the number of years I had the studio. And guess what? It was 9.5%. So I was right in there. And that included me because I was an S Corp, which in the United States, then I could be a W-2 employee. So it included my payroll taxes, my retirement contributions. So it was 9.5%. So if you are thinking, can I afford this? Or what would that look like as an impact to my budget? Then just look at your P&L from last year how much did you pay your independent contractors, and take about 10% of that. So if you had $100,000, we'll make it super easy. If you had $120,000 in payroll, that's $12,000 a month. That's $12,000 in additional payroll tax. That's $1,200 a month, right? So sometimes when you break it down, it's like, well, yes, it's a stretch, and I might be able to work towards that. And or the other thing to do is, if you want to Vicky's point, with you want them to do more than just show up and teach class. Josh has talked about this before in the past. If all you want your teachers to be is the talent, then you got to have desk staff. I think we shoot ourselves in the proverbial foot when we're saying, okay, I'm going to make my teachers IC, independent contractors, and I'm going to ask them gently to do some of these other things. And because we all want to help people, yeah, sure, I'll check my class in. But we really can only hope that maybe they do the sales process. Whereas if you looked at it as, I actually get desk staff, then I will cover that expense readily by having a trained desk staff. So now I think, Josh, we talk about, if you're a brand new opening a studio, hire desk staff first. Get like 4 desk staff even before you get your teachers. Vicky.
So I had this question this week. What if I don't have enough work for a desk staff? What if the studio is small? The studio might be really small.
Right.
It could be that the studios that take like max 18 people. Is it even worth it having a desk person?
If your teachers aren't doing it, then yeah.
And what else do
Okay.
they do? Right? If there isn't, like, it's just like a really small operation, then just literally isn't enough work for that person to do during the class.
Well, let's think about some. Okay, let's brainstorm on that. All right, so you have a smaller size studio. They've checked class in. And let's say the class is, whether it's an hour, whatever the length of the class is, what are some things that they can always clean? Right. And they can clean bathroom. If there's not a hot room, they can clean bathrooms, they can clean baseboards, they can wipe things down. They can, if you have some small retail, they can re-merchandise the retail. They can also make phone calls. They can start calling people. Like, I have some of my clients now they're actually starting to call people before they even take their first class. Right. So they look at the roster, and like, and the morning shift calls the evening, or so if you only have one shift in the evening, they call the people the next day. Welcome into the studio. Do you have any questions? Right? They can out or about, if someone's on their intro period, that they can start making those phone calls. They can send text messages. They could do some social media posts. There is so much that your desk staff can do while the class is going on. And that part of that is starting with hiring the person, hiring it as a sales and customer service. And then if you want them to do these other, you include it in the job description. So I really will take, even in a small operation, I challenge anybody who says, I don't know what they're going to do. There is so much that they can do for you. Maybe they do some low-level admin tasks for you. Right? Things that maybe some admin tasks for you that you don't want to do. I don't know, file your receipts, set up Google. I guess this comes out of my growing up. The worst thing we could say when we grew up was, I'm bored. Because if we said I'm bored, hashtag Terry's dad, he'd find us something to do. So we learned early on, you got to find something to do. So I don't know. What do you think? I see you smiling up there you're at the top of the Brady Bunch box.
I mean, it's interesting because when we started with desk staff, it was kind of like, oh yeah, you check people in and then you read, while the class is going on. And then it was like, no, this is not how this should work. And so we slowly added all you're talking about, Terry. Like, yes, I need you to clean. I need you to flip the laundry. I need you to make these phone calls. I need you to check the books. Like there's always something. And I think, yeah, it might start off slow if you're a new studio or a small studio, but those things will grow and you'll start to recognize things that like you as the owner don't want to do and like shouldn't be doing, so that you can think more high level and get, see the broader picture again, and yeah, have the people on the ground doing these things that are going to benefit your business. The people calling before their first class. Another thing, it's like maybe they're monitoring messages on social media and they're reaching out to people to try to get them on their first class even. Like that could be something really beneficial to the
Oh, I
studio,
like
get
that.
new people in, you know, like any of the channels where you're getting messages. Like, you know, I hated, you know, Facebook message. Oh, I got to get to that because like Facebook will tell you like you have this message waiting.
Yeah.
You haven't responded yet.
Need
I
to
was
do
like,
it.
ah. So, you know, if somebody else were monitoring that and reaching out and trying to get them on their intro, like that would be a great benefit to the studio. So just
I
my
just
thoughts.
I just had a thought when you said that, if you go to social media and you see who liked your post or send them a direct message.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
reach out
could,
and say, hey, I saw you like this post. Did you know we have this cool thing? And send them the link to your intro offer,
yeah.
right? I mean, they can do that. And the other thing is running errands, particularly if it's a longer class, like a 90-minute class. It's like, okay, I need you to go, and you pay the mileage, right? And you say, I need you to go pick up this order. I need you to go to the printer and have these things printed off and laminated, or go pick them up for me, right? I had actually, there was a studio in Boston that it wasn't the owner who told me this. No, yes, it was the owner who told me this. Yeah, it was the owner. She gave a membership. Well, it was not really, they weren't like a karma cleaner. They were a karma errand person. They would go do the Costco run every week. They would go do this. She's like, I just didn't want to have to deal with that. So there's another thing you can have. Man, we just came up a shit ton of stuff that your desk staff could do. So when someone says there's nothing for them to do, it's like bullshit. There's tons to do, Vicky.
And we actually have this thing like DMs on Instagram. So this is actually, I'm reading from our lead generation module that we do for coaching. So this is a strategy that other industries, not yoga studios, are using so much. So find 10 people per day in your local area and follow. Leave 10 comments on their posts. DM each of them a personal video in the studio, inviting them into the studio. And then if 10% of them interact with you at all, that's like 60 people per month. If 1% show up and buy, that's 6 new members per quarter.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There's something to do. Yeah.
With that, I'm going to have to jump and go to my yoga class.
Okay, go do yoga.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Bye. Happy
Bye.
weekend.
Yeah, so there you have it. You don't know what to do with your front desk. We just gave you a whole list. Now, here's an interesting one too, and I know some studios do this, is letting front desk staff practice on their shift. And at least at some of the studios, they're like, well, they have to clock out and then clock back in. But I have a client who lets their front desk practice on shift and they get paid for it. And I wish I had a picture of my face. I should go back and have a screenshot of my face on the Zoom call when they told me that. I was like this. Serious. I was like, really? And they say that's why we have such loyal front desk staff and they stay. And I mean, I will say their desk staff does a lot. So for them, this owner made the decision that this is like we want you to practice. And however, it was getting a little bit out of hand. So they did have to put some reins on it. My policy at my studio was, my front desk staff had, a staff membership. They could practice whenever they want, but I was very clear, not on shift, because of the exact thing we just went through. There was all kinds of stuff that they had to do during their shift. And I know some studios like, well, if you get everything done before your shift, then you can practice on your shift. But we just listed a shit ton of stuff that can be done during shifts. So I don't know, Carol, what are your thoughts on that, friend?
Yeah, I mean, we did allow the desk staff to take class, but they did have to clock out and they had to make sure all of their things were done and there weren't any, extra pieces that would have to, anything that was urgent had to be done, during class. They could not take class. Only a few times did it feel like it was being taken advantage of. And it was, there were times it's like you have 2 shifts and you're taking both classes. How is
Oh,
that
no.
possible? Like, no, like, so now would I coach to that now? Maybe not. I think I would put more duties on them at that point and think of these lead gen things that could happen, or phone call reach outs, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know if I would do it the same, if I own the studio now, or if I would change it up. So yeah, because there are, like you said, we just thought of like a million things that we could
And
have them do.
I think it's interesting too. You just made me think of something, Carol, is just like everything, the evolution of what we consider front desk,
Mhm.
right? I think back in the day, it was just front desk was like you just check people in the class, and anybody could do that. Like a karma that to me is like the one thing I'm like, you, as people didn't see the front desk as really that important. It was just what the front, oh, we just need somebody to check people in the class and make sure they get checked off, and either on the piece of paper way back in the day, or in whatever software you use, and and process transactions. That was pretty much it. If you're still of that mindset, and I don't think too many people are anymore, but a front desk is really, I think we need to come up with another name for it. For it's more than front desk. It is sales and customer service. Some people are starting to call them studio assistants, membership coordinators. There's different, but I think part of the shift has to be is what is the role of that position? And it is so much more than just checking people in the class.
Yeah, well, I mean, back in the day, it was like we had 2 teachers there,
Right.
they were just kind of, and the extra teacher was there as a body to just help with the class check-in, like you said. And then when we realized, like, actually, if we broke this out and like the teacher's role is
Mhm.
really this to, teach a kick-ass class, make them want to come back, connect with the students. We put that, I don't know, there's just, it gets to be too much for one person to do
Yeah.
all the things. So then this client coordinator, membership, whatever you want,
Whatever you're gonna
front
call it.
desk
Yeah.
role is something completely different. And there are different skill sets for that. And then if they can both, live separately, but have very clear duties and roles and goals, then I don't know, it just made more, that was our evolution,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, it just has grown into like, obviously these are different things.
Right. And that was born out. Carol and I were at an onsite last week in St. Louis, at Carol's old studio, Pure Hot Yoga, with Ellen House, who is the new owner of the studio. And we spent 3 days just going through the sales process and the first visit flow and role playing the heck out of it. And it was really fun to see the evolution of the team as they got behind it and understanding, wow, the power of a few simple phrases like what most people do. And actually, this is why we recommend, and just really breaking it down, and then just to see the results of that, working with the opportunities list, and how easy it is. On our last night there, after doing, 3 days of training, the person on the front desk, they had just when we do the on-sites, we do these role play, we set up scenarios. It's like, okay, I'm coming to the desk. I've bought a drop-in and you're going to upsell me to the intro pass or the first month of membership, or I'm coming in on a buddy pass and you're going to upsell me, because we find a lot of times people come with buddy passes. We've talked about this before, and nothing happens. So we did these role plays. Oh, they were pretty fun, weren't they, Carol? We had some fun with those. But however, that night, the last night, we're there, and the front desk, Julie is her name, was at the front desk, and she looked at her roster because she looked at her opportunities list, and she saw, oh, I've got 2 people coming in on guest pass, and I have 1 person coming in on a drop-in. And we just sort of hung back, let her, and the teacher was doing her thing, part of the process. and it worked. And the front Julie was able to upsell both the drop-in and the 2 guest passes to their first month of membership. And they were like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I want to do that? Yeah, that's a great deal. Oh yeah, I'll do that. And all it took for her was trying.
Make the
And
offer.
make the offer.
Yeah.
And was it the smooth? It wasn't super smooth, but she did it. And they were like, and then once she got engaged, it became easier and easier. And it was just it was very gratifying to see her just start to own it and like say, yeah, I can do this. This is part of what my job is, right? And get excited about it. So it really does work.
Yes, it does.
And the other one was the opportunities list. Like on the opportunities list was a client who was down to their last class on their 10-pack.
Oh yeah.
All they said is, hey, Carol, you're as signed in on the iPad. Hey, Carol, just want to let you know you're down to your last class. You have 1 class left. Do you want me to hit you up for your next 10? She goes, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, charge my card. Boom. This stuff works.
They're on to the next one.
And they're on the
Yep.
next
They're
one.
locked in with that next card.
Locked in with that next one. Yeah. So all of these things that we talk about in coaching, in our lead to membership program, and also when we're doing our yoga sales boot camps, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the numbers are there. In fact, one of our Kristen Sapp of Orange Lotus, we did this at her studio back in September. And same thing is, a big thing with a lot of the conversion is the drop-ins and the buddy passes, especially with the direct to membership model. And so she had January, obviously it's a busy month. And we like to say with a direct to membership, a good rate of first time visitors getting that offer is 50 to 60% is what we shoot for. We say that's a good sweet spot. And anyway, she's been really working with her team since we left. Numbers have been improving. Just continuing to role play with her teachers. She's hired a couple of new front desk people, really role played the heck out of that. And in January, she had, of all her first visits, 86% bought their first month membership discount deal. Yeah. And that's like phenomenal.
Huge. Yeah.
And she did not do a free yoga weekend. I want to throw that out there. She did not do because oftentimes if you have a free yoga weekend where you have a super duper deal, you are going to get a really high conversion because like, oh yeah, I'm going to spend $19, $29. She did not do a free yoga weekend. I want to say that. So of that 86%, here's the other amazing part of that. Of that 86%, half were conversions from drop-ins and buddy passes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sales language or the presenting the offer makes such a huge difference.
And when yoga teachers say that, oh, I don't sell, bullshit.
Yeah.
We say it nicer. We say it much nicer on the on-sites, but it really is. It's like you're just presenting the offer of yoga, of possibility to change your life. So everyone. Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to
go ahead.
Jolyn too. Like, I don't know if you like Jolyn did one in October and she's seeing some massive changes too. So it's like, you got to get this stuff in place.
Every client who did it on site last year has seen an increase in their conversions and people buying their intro deal. We do have a few spots left this year for the Yoga Sales Bootcamp. If you are interested, you can DM me, you DM Josh, Carol, whoever. You can drop your name in the comments below. We do only have a few spots left to be able to do the Yoga Sales Bootcamp. And what we do is we just come in and we turn things upside down and look at your process and streamline it and just help you become more efficient at getting people on a habitual yoga practice and helping people transform their lives. So God, we've kind of come around. What else? How are the websites going, Carol?
They're going great. Just finished up another one. I'm looking at possibly another one coming up soon. So if that's something you're interested in, hit me up. Let me know what you need. I'm here for you. But yeah, we're all about making the website convert. So again, just like getting your team to work for you, you want your website to be working for you as well, right? And bringing people in the door. And so we have some YC proven templates and content that we work with. And yeah, so I do those for you if you're interested.
But is the one that is it finished? Is it pretty much finished?
A few tweaks. It's up, but we're finishing, few final touches on it. But yeah, it's a Southern Ohm in South Carolina.
What's it called again?
Southern Ohm.
So if you're interested, look it up, see. But also, didn't you also revamp Yoga East Austin too?
I did. Yoga East
Yeah.
Austin is
Yoga
up and
East Austin
going.
is up and going. They've
Yep.
used our service. It looks really good. So yeah, if you're just interested in taking a look at what a website looks like to get leads to members, take a look at those. I know this sounds really like a lot about an infomercial. Yeah, it is a little bit, guys, but also it's because we really want you to succeed. And we do have the tried and true and proven methods of how to help you succeed. So, anything else happening for you, Carol, in your calls? What's anything going on there? Challenges, problems people facing?
Oh, it's, the same old stuff. A lot of staff, it's that's always a big challenge for people, for studio owners. I think you get into this like, oh, it's easy. I'm just going to open a studio and teach them yoga, and there's a lot more to it. So managing people, knowing how to sell, like these things, if you need help, that's what we're here for, because we've
Right.
all experienced it. And we know the challenges, and we can help.
And they also just sort of circling back to, staff and we're human beings. We all have our faults. We all have our foibles. We all have our magnificence. We're ugly. We're messy. It's ugly and messy. And, sometimes dealing with human beings, and it's joyful and uplifting and amazing. And, it's just, there's all the emotions when we're dealing with human beings. So that's why just, maybe final thoughts is just making sure that your human resources, that you also want to protect yourself. We say this a lot. It's like at the end of the day, setting up your business to function and do all the things and having everything in place is also to protect yourself, yourself personally, your resources, your family, things like that. And a lot of this that you need to do the work on, yes, it's like, I don't want to do that document. I don't want to do that. Again, it goes back to, you want to make sure that you are safe and protected. So if something does go down, you're not going to lose everything. And that we've seen that happen. For want of a nail, a kingdom was lost. And if you haven't ever heard that proverb, look it up. For the want of a nail, right? Sometimes it's the small things that lead to bigger problems. And then down the road, you lose something big, all because there wasn't a nail to put on the shoe horse on, right? So it's like, that's where it's like, we're getting those things buttoned up in the beginning. And then it isn't sort of like a set it and forget it. You can have to review, particularly when it comes to like employment law, and as things change and this thing and that thing goes up, you need to make sure you're up to date. And the other part of that is, and I actually just did a form for this. I'm going to send it to you guys to see what you think. I kind of just copied one. Is if you are dealing with a challenging situation with a staff, is what is your process in terms of disciplinary action, right? In terms of, are you documenting it? Because that's the other big thing, is that if you're giving someone a reprimand or a warning, it's like, okay, you were late again, you were late. It's, you need to be on time. And then if they're perpetually late, right? So what's the process for that? And ideally, it should be a written document that's filled out and signed. The employee signs, it goes in their employment file. So then if there's a pattern and you do need to offboard them, you have the documentation that supports the reason why. So that's another practice. And it's just, it's hard. It's hard to have these conversations with people. And I did just have a client that had to let go a very popular teacher. Very popular teacher, classes almost always full with a wait list, and was not doing what she was supposed to do and hadn't been. And so and finally it's like, okay, we have to let her go. And they did. It was hard. And guess what? Not much changed, except for the fact what was really interesting in that, which I thought was several staff members came up to the man at the GM and said, is there anything I should be doing so that doesn't happen to me?
Yeah, here's the performance-based pay scale. These are the things you should be doing. These are the expectations.
Because oftentimes people think, oh, they're never going to find this. They'll never let this person go because she's so popular, or he's so popular, they're so popular, because their classes are full. And conversely, sometimes those rock star prima donnas oftentimes can be your biggest thorn in your side. And if you're keeping them around because you're afraid that you're going to, I would just say you're better off just ripping the Band-Aid off. Because there was literally the class time she taught, they're still full.
How many times have we seen this, Terry? Like so many clients or, studio owners that are clients, it's like they're nervous about it. They hem and haw, and it's weighing on them for months sometimes, and when they finally do it and it's still okay.
Yeah.
We've seen it.
Yeah,
I've experienced it.
Oh yeah, totally. But I've experienced it myself as well. And the other part of it too is that it's no different than kids. It's like, okay, they see this person, she's popular, she does all this, whatever, and she flaunts the rules and gets away with it. And then it's like, well, man, I do everything I'm supposed to do. It's like, well, then why should I follow the rules? I mean, we do. It is a cancer and it can spread. So, yeah, it is very, very interesting that we've talked about this before. If you're running if running your business from a place of fear, that is so hard. And I think at some point we've all been there. At times, I mean, Carol, you certainly were a studio owner way longer than I was. Were there times when you were like felt, even before the pandemic, let's face it, pandemic was that was a once in a millennial thing. But beyond that, even before that, were there times where you just were fearful about stuff to do in your business?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, specifically around,
People.
staffing and people. Yeah. Yeah.
That's always, I think, the big ones.
However, I always, I don't know, there was something, I enjoyed being the leader, there was something like, I am not the type of person who is necessarily afraid of confrontation either. So I think that helped me in a lot of situations because I didn't feel the need to have everybody like me, like I am the boss. These are the things I'm laying out to you in a non-emotional way, So I don't know, that served me, I think, well. And I think a lot, not to categorize, but I feel like a lot of female owners they don't necessarily, it's hard to step into that for some people.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. It's like typically, particularly those of us of a certain generation, we are raised to be people pleasers, right? That's part, nowadays, I don't think it's quite so much it was, particularly in the generation I grew up. And then also depending on your personality style, there are certainly men that are people pleasers and women that are, it's not necessarily stereotypical. However, there definitely does tend to be that stereotype. And conversely, because I was accused of this, is that if you are step into that power, I know that people thought I was just like this not badass, this bitch, this business bitch. I was only concerned about business. I actually had one of my teachers say, well, perhaps if you were more of a yogi than a business person. I'm like, what?
I own a business.
I own a business, right?
I have to keep the business
I have
going.
to, yeah, it's like, what, and what is if I was more of a yogi than I was just like, and then, but if I were a man, I don't think they would have said that to me at all. Right. So
No.
there is sort of that too. Is like sometimes we're like, don't want to be perceived as the badass. Well, badass business bitches, I think that's like, you should be perceived as the badass business bitch. But just a plain old bitch, yeah, but again, it's like sometimes you got to be. And I think maybe it's like we always say numbers don't lie. When you have the facts with people, that doesn't lie either. So when you do have to make those tough decisions to offboard someone, if you have the facts, if you have the documentation, if you have all of that in place, and that can help ease that
Well, and
transition.
this is actually triggering something that did come up on a call this week, is that I worked with a client on getting her mission, vision, core values all dialed in the last couple of weeks. And she had a teacher that was not, in the headspace due to outside forces,
Right.
like she's going through a lot. She wasn't able to really be fully present and deliver the classes as the studio owner wanted. And, the studio owner was very concerned about having this conversation with the person. And she's like, you know what? I went into her and I said, here are the core values. Can you perform? Can you like be in these with me at this point? And the teacher said, you know what? I can't.
Yeah.
And then it actually
Made her better. It
made
probably,
both, it like sort of broke down this like, I'm against you in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, it was like, this is clear, and it doesn't mean that you can't be with us in the future.
Right.
But these are the things that I need from you as an employee. And it just sort of, it started a conversation.
Yeah.
They left feeling good. Not
Right.
right now, no teaching right now, but maybe later. And, you can still be that badass bitch,
Yeah.
business bitch. And if you lead with that kind of, mission of core values, et cetera,
Right.
and just lay it out there non-emotionally, then it works out. You
Yeah.
can have all
And
those things.
that just it wasn't me personally, but it was a friend of mine who has a studio back in the New England area. And she was early on a doctor with performance-based pay. And there was one teacher that was at the top level, which is like mentor teacher. And which, I don't want, whatever that pay scale was. And the mentor teacher was not performing at that top tier, was not performing half or more than half of what she was supposed to be at that top tier pay. And so the same thing is like my friend was, and then but she just brought out the pay scale. They sat down with the teacher and just said, you're not hitting and the teacher was like, how can I help?
Mhm.
Is there a way? And then the teacher's like, I just can't do this right now. And the thing is that the teacher was feeling kind of guilty that she was being paid this top tier. And so it was a stressor for her because she felt like, yeah, I know I'm not doing these things. And so in a way, it was like they agreed. They said, okay, this is the tier that you now. And she said, fine, take me to that tier. And it was, I don't know, it was like $20 a class less or whatever it was. But it was great because again, that there was that document. It's like, these are the areas you're not doing, kind of similar to what you said with the values, is like, this is what you're not fulfilling. If you need to keep you here, how can I help you what's the plan to fulfill these? Or what's the tier that you can commit to right now?
Mhm.
Right. And then with the understanding in this case is like, well, when you feel that you're ready to, because I know this teacher, right? She's a really one of those just intuitive, fabulous teachers. is like, when you feel that you're ready to move back to this and can take on these responsibilities, just let me know and we'll bump you right back up.
Right.
Right. So it was like,
Right.
this is where you need to, and she was fine with that. And it took a lot of pressure off both of them. So this is where, when you have these type of things, it makes these conversations with us messy, flawed human beings a little less emotional, right? Because
Yeah.
you have it, it's not just, well, he said, she said, or I think, or it's like, look, this is it. What,
Yeah.
how can we get you here?
Yeah.
So this is probably, for me, and I think a lot of people, this is like the hardest side of business.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you get it all set up to start and it's done and it's in place, it makes things a lot better. And if you're just starting out, like we have several clients now that are just starting out, this is where you get to define it right out the gate. And for those of you who have been in business a while and you don't have, we talked about this a while back, if you don't have these things in place, it doesn't mean that you can't make changes. It does not mean that you cannot institute policies, you cannot change your teacher contract, that you cannot change your pay scale. It does not mean none of that. It just means you got to figure out what you want to do and figure out how to launch it and roll it out. And sometimes when you do make grand sweeping changes like that, some people may self-select and like, yeah, no, I'm not. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know of a business that a teacher left and the business fell apart.
Hasn't happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, unless like the entire staff walks out, but that's a whole, there's real
It's a
problems.
different, yeah.
That's a different scenario, but yeah,
Yes.
anyway. Well, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah. Covered the gamut.
Covered the gamut. You know, hashtag Terry's dad, your staff is your biggest asset and your biggest pain in the ass.
Truth. Terry's dad. Very truthful.
Yeah,
Yes.
for those of you who don't know or fairly new to the YC, my father was my first boss. He was my hero and my mentor. So a lot of the stuff I learned working for him from the time I was like 5 years old all the way till my early 30s. So yeah. And sometimes I think back and like, how did he do that? How did he do that? I wish, unfortunately, my father passed before I got my yoga studio. I would have loved to have had conversations with him about like, Dad, Alara's a lot of time, I'm like, Dad, how did you do this? Looking heavenward. And actually, one of the funniest things is when I first bought the studio, one do you want to know what the first thing, one of the first major things I had to deal with at my studio was unclogging a drain in the shower that was, and I'm pulling out. Those of you who have a shower in your studio, you know what I'm talking about. It was just like, and I'm pulling it and I'm trying to get it to go. The shower's not working. And I'm sitting there and I had just taken class and I'm all sweaty and this and that. And then I'm just, all of a sudden I just start laughing. I laughing started, practically cried. I said, oh God, Dad, now I know what you went through, kind of thing. It was just one of those moments where I was just like, yeah, this is reality. Welcome to business ownership, unclogging the shower drain.
Yeah. I have plenty of those moments too.
All right. Well, everybody thanks for hanging in there with us. Those of you who are watching the recording, post your comments below. Let us know. What are you thinking about? How are you feeling about where your pay structure is? Do you need help with stuff? What about all these things we've talked about? Let us know what's going on in your world. And, any questions, comments, post them below. And you need any help, you can always book a call with any of the coaches. We do have free coaching calls. If you don't have a current coach and you just like to talk about some of these things, we'd be happy to do that. So I think that's about it.
All that's left is